Good afternoon and welcome to Tech Tuesday. For the month of February, we are going to be exploring different types of digital assessment tools. And today we're going to be taking you into Nearpod and showing you how you can use that for different types of assessment. So I'm just going to switch screens as everybody gets logged in and we'll begin. Today we are going to focus on Nearpod as a digital assessment tool. So we're going to be looking at Nearpod through the lens of assessment as for and of learning as outlined in Growing Success. And we'll look at how to use Nearpod for those different types of assessment. So if we're looking at assessment for learning, we're talking about the more formative and diagnostic types of assessment that you would use at different moments during those learning units or time frames that we can use to gather evidence from students to drive our instruction, to help us adjust our classroom instruction and meet the needs of the students in our class. We're also going to look at the possibility of the assessment as learning piece and how we can include the use of Nearpod for self and peer assessment type of assessment tools, and really offer students the chance to set their own personal learning goals and to advocate for their own learning. And also looking at the assessment of learning, the more summative type of assessment that we're using to measure a moment in time and record and report on that student's learning achievement. So now I'm going to take you to explore the website, Nearpod. And Nearpod.com is where teachers will create an account. Students will not need to create an account to be able to interact with Nearpod. They will enter in through either Nearpod.com or through the iPod app, Nearpod. And they will use a code generated from your lessons to be able to enter in and participate in that learning moment. So I'm going to show you the different aspects of what that could look like. So once you create your account, you're going to come into a home page here. You'll notice that you have a few options. The first is your library, and that's where you will store any of the lessons you build or slideshows that you build within here. You also have Explore, and that's where there's some pre-made lessons that are ready to use. Some of them are free and some of them are paid lessons. The Join button is where students will come to join in on one of your slideshow lessons. Create is where you're going to build those slideshows, and Reports, and that's where it's going to save the student input that they put into those slides. So unlike PowerPoint or Keynote that also are slideshow programs, this is a more of an interactive slideshow where students will be able to input onto slides, and you'll be able to share those slides back and forth between teacher and student. So I'm going to go ahead and come into Create. And you'll notice that right away it's going to generate for you this presentation. So you can go ahead and rename that, whatever it is you'd like to name it. And right away it's going to prompt you to add a slide. So when I say add a slide, it's going to give me three choices. So content, I'll click on that, you can see if you are building lessons, so you might choose to put in a slide that has a photo or some text into it, so you would just add a slide. You could import a video or audio if you had that to put into your lesson. You'll notice that there's also slideshow where you can import an entire slideshow. If you've already created some type of presentation or lesson in PowerPoint or Keynote, you can import all of the slides at once through slideshow. There's also some other features, field trip, etc. Those are upgraded features, so we're not going to focus on those today. We're going to stick with what's free and very useful for educators. Adding web content is an upgrade as well, and just to make you aware, that's where you can add in web pages for your students to interact right inside of your presentation. But for today in assessment, we're actually going to focus on the add activity. So when I say add activity, you'll notice that it pops up some options here. So I can ask students an open-ended question. So you can see here I can build a quiz or a type of assessment for the students. I can ask them a poll question that perhaps doesn't have a particular right answer. I can ask them a quiz question that's like a multiple choice where I can assign a correct answer. And my favorite feature is the draw it feature, which allows students when they're on a touch device like the iPad to use their finger and write right onto the slide, which is really powerful when you're collecting that just-in-time feedback and in-the-moment assessment. Whether it's for a MindsOn activity or a diagnostic activity, you'll be able to get immediate feedback from your students. And again, as you continue, there's some more options like fill in the blank, but those are also upgrades. So we're going to focus on these 4 here. I'm just going to show you how quick it is to build a slide. So for a quiz feature, I can go ahead and put in different responses here. And I can add as many as I want, as many multiple choice options. And I can select which one is the correct answer. So it'll actually generate the correct and mark that for me and give me percentages of how many of my students got that response correct, which is really powerful when I'm trying to get feedback to drive my lesson and whether I might need to change it right on the spot or whether the students have a general understanding and I'm ready to continue. Depending again on that type of assessment, or I might be using this as an assessment of piece where I'm looking for particular students and whether they were able to understand and get the correct answers. So once you go ahead and do that, you would just simply say save, and it's going to generate that question onto a slide. So you would go ahead and go back to add a slide, and whether it's content or adding in another activity, you would go ahead and continue building the different types of responses, questions and responses that you want from your students. Once you were happy with all of that, you would come down here to where it says publish, and it would go ahead and, it has to be at least 2 slides, so we'll just add one more in there really quickly. And once you're ready to publish that, it's going to ask you to name your presentation and label it. So here you can add a description, assign your grade level, and whatever subject area perhaps you were attaching that to, and say publish. And what that's going to do is it's going to publish it right into your library here. So here are all the saved presentations that I've created in Nearpod. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple to show you some of the possibilities and how you might use that. And as I hover over it, you'll notice it gives you 3 options here. If I wanted to change or add or edit it at all, I would just say edit, and it would take me back into that previous screen. Now I have the choice of a live session or a homework session. A live session is what we're going to use for kind of that on-the-spot feedback from our students. The homework option is an upgrade, so we're not going to go there today. So I'm going to go ahead and click live session. And I was in that one, so it's just asking me. So here you'll see it automatically creates a code, and it's going to generate that code new each time you launch this lesson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that would look like in the student view, because students see something different than you do. So I'm going to go ahead on the iPad here and just bring that down so you can kind of see both of them at the same time. So what I'm going to do is have the students go to that little orange box where it says join the session and type in that code, which is not case sensitive, which is great for the primary students. And I'm going to go ahead and ask them to join that session. And it didn't like that, so I'm just going to try that again. And once I do that, it's going to take just a moment to kind of load that presentation, and then it's going to ask for their name. So we have a conversation with the students about what I would like them to enter there, either just their first name, initials, or some teachers have their students numbered off, student 1, student 2, student 3, and they could go ahead and hit that. And once they do that, it's going to take them to the first question. So I'm just going to show you on teacher view. So what I've done is I've used the drawing feature here, and it's asking the students to label each of their images. So if I come back to student view, you'll notice that it's going to ask me the same to label those. And if you look down in the bottom here, it gives them some draw features. So if I press on the pencil, I can increase the width of the writing or change the color of it. There's a highlighter tool, there's a text tool, there's even picture tools. And I'll show you what you might use those for. So in this case, it's just asking me to go ahead and label those fractions. So you can see the students could write right on there. And once they're happy with that, they would just say send. It's going to always ask them if they're confirming that they would like to send that. And once they do that, if you notice over here on teacher view, as it syncs up, all of the students' responses are actually going to come into my view live. So whether I'm looking at this on a desktop or whether I'm looking at it on an iPad that I'm using in my hand in the classroom, you can see now that those student responses will come in. And if I had 20 students, you would see 20 different images here. And I could go ahead and click on any one of those and blow that up. So you can see I could kind of flip through all of the student responses and immediately get some feedback as to whether I could continue this lesson if I'm using it as an assessment piece at the beginning of a MindsOn or something like that, or whether I needed to pause and redirect that lesson to meet the needs of those students. You'll also notice that there's a button here to share. So depending on what you were using it for, if I wanted to highlight something with the students, if I said share on a particular image that came in, and we look back at the iPad, it's actually going to push that back out to the students' iPads. So a great way if you wanted to highlight a student response, but depending on what type of assessment you're doing, you may or may not want to do that. And I, as the teacher, control those slides coming in. So as I'm ready to go ahead and move forward, I'll click forward onto the next slide. And you'll see that it's now changed that on the iPad. So it's asking now the students to shade in those parts. So as the student, I'm looking at here and it's telling me those instructions. I can choose to use the highlighter tool for this. And I might color in, it's asking me for 5/6. Or down here for 3/8. And again, the students would go ahead and say send and confirm that. And it's going to push it back to the teacher. So again, as a teacher, I am either looking at this on a computer, a laptop, or on an iPad, or even on a phone. And here's that student response. And again, I can, as the teacher, quickly flip through all the student responses and get a really good idea of whether the students have an understanding of this. So you can see the power of that just-in-time feedback to really respond to my student needs in my class. Also could be used as a really effective exit ticket to kind of drive my instruction for the next day as well. So those are the draw it features. And again, here it's just highlighting an open response. So you can see it's asking them what a fraction is, and they can go and either type in or use the speech-to-text features if they're on an iPad. And they can give me their response and say send and confirm, and all the student responses would start to come in with the list of the whole class here. So just a quick way to show you the different types of responses and what that looks like. And I'm going to go ahead in the top left here, and it's asking me would I like to leave. Yes, I do. And I'm back out to my library. So I'd like to take you back to the home screen now and show you. It's going to store all those student responses in here until you choose to delete them. So if I come into reports, it's going to have all of the lessons that I've launched. And as I click on that one we just launched, it will tell you the times and dates that you launched those, how many students participated. And it starts with an overall summary here, how many students participated in it. And then I can go through each question that I had. I had an open-ended one. If I click on that, it's going to list all the students and all their responses and how many participated. And if I go to the Draw It feature, I can click on any of the questions and it would have all the students, all their drawings, and again, I can choose to click on that and review that. And that's going to store all of that right into your reports for you attached to your account. So a really powerful assessment tool that you can use there. And I'm going to come back out to the home page and I'm going to come back into my library and I'm just going to show you another option of what that could look like. So here I'm going to go ahead and launch a new session. And it's going to generate that new code. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that as if I'm a student. And again, it's going to take just a moment to load that, and it's going to ask again for the student's name. And once I have all my students in, again, I can tell in the top left how many students are in, and it saves that code just in case a student gets bumped out. And I can go ahead and flip through this. So what I've done is actually just taken a screenshot of an online article, and I've put that right in for the students. And if I click over to the iPad, you'll see what it looks like on the student view. And as I go through that article, I'm actually using this to have the students read right on the device, this particular article. And so I've entered that as content, but now I'm going to enter in a question. So I've asked them an open-ended question, what the main idea is, and some multiple choice questions here. And some more multiple choice questions. And I've also added in a Draw It feature. So what I've done is taken that article and I've asked them a question, and the students then can come in and kind of highlight in the article where they think that response might be. And they can send that to me. And again, that's going to come in as a drawing that I can quickly flip through and get a really good idea of the student's understanding of this article and where I need to go with my instruction from this point. So I'm going to come back out of here now, just really quickly to show you some other options that you could use this for. So we're talking about those different types of assessment. So you can see here in math, again, whether it's a MindsOn or an exit ticket, I can really get a quick snapshot of what my students understand from those drawing pieces. A really powerful way to use this, if you're not fully committed yet to trying to run a whole lesson on Nearpod, is you can simply use it with blank slides. So when you create your presentation and you go to add an activity and you go to the Draw It feature, you can just leave a bunch of blank slides there. So now as you're doing any particular activity in your class, you can have students go ahead and on the spot enter onto those blank slides. And you can see in this image here, a student's actually taken a photograph of what they were working on, and then they were able to draw over top and add some extra information. So a really great way to get started with assessment is just to create blank slides and use them in the moment in your lessons in class as those moments arise. And here the students annotated over top and is kind of explaining their thinking there. Here we have a student who's taking a photo of actual manipulatives and then adding their thoughts on top of that. So really great use of using just those blank slides. Perhaps maybe during a shared reading experience, you could have the students summarizing the article on a blank slide. Or during presentations, they could be collecting some of the key information. And a really great way to collect that in a digital way. So when we're using that assessment to drive our instruction, the possibilities are really endless with Nearpod and those blank slides. So we can collect that data and use that to clarify the understanding and share learning with each other. We can also use it to kind of drive discussions or future tasks and activities that we really want to elicit out of those students and that learning. We can use it to provide feedback. So I can really intervene with my students in the moment on the spot when I can see what they're giving me, or regroup them during a particular lesson. We're also talking about advocating students as learning resources for each other and being able to kind of group and regroup students to help each other out, and also really making students owners of their own learning. I'm just going to leave you with this short video on assessment. So excuse me, thank you for joining us today on our Tech Tuesday, taking a look at digital assessment. And we hope that you were able to take something away to help you get started. Please feel free on any Tuesday to come in and ask us questions. So if you try something out and you have a follow-up question, we'll be here to try to help you out. And if you're looking for any face-to-face opportunities to do some learning with us, please check PD Place. Have a great Tuesday.